Hey, we're Group 8. Today we're going to be talking about our preliminary task that we produced prior to making our final production of Damnation. We're going to be talking about what we learned and how we benefited from making the preliminary task that allowed us to make our final project to a higher standard.
The brief for our final project meant that we had to include some certain aspects. This included the characters opening the door, had to have at least 2 lines of dialogue. It also had to include us experimenting with different camera techniques, and the entire video had to obey the 180-degree rule. The short film also had to be filmed and edited in a way that would suggest no lack of continuity.
For our preliminary task, a large amount of planning went into ensuring we produced a video of a respective standard, but at the same time would act as a learning curve. The main thing we planned was a variety of artistic camera shots, experimenting with camera techniques in this task as well as during our trip to Wilderness Woods, and generally around school. For this reason, we ended up using some similar shots that we were fond of, both in the preliminary task and final production, such as the close-up of our characters' feet.
Another aspect that required planning was the dialogue, because we knew that it could possibly ruin the entire project if we overdid it. So by planning and experimenting, although we did not use dialogue in our final production, we feel that it was a major learning curve. The dialogue used by the characters in the preliminary task was very enigmatic, and in that both lines of dialogue imply some sort of conflict and are quite mysterious, such as the line, "You got the goods," which suggests a shady deal is going to happen, but does not tell the audience what the goods are.
We also used intertextuality throughout our preliminary task by using a situation often found in Western films. The shot I'm referring to is the confrontation between the 2 characters on the street, and we represented this sequence. We represented this by a sequence of shots starting with a low-angle shot tilting upwards to show the character's face. We also included a 360-degree pan circling both characters, connoting a possible hero and his nemesis. We represented the standoff by considering the rule of thirds. We framed both characters on opposite sides of a long road. We directed them to stand in a similar stance that would suggest they were prepared for confrontation.
The narrative of our preliminary task was open to interpretation and ambiguous, so that the preferred reading is that the 2 characters were meeting to exchange some sort of possibly mysterious or illegal good. However, during production of our opening sequence of Damnation, narrative had a more important role. We depicted a murder victim using a tracking shot, and then using the planning and motives behind the murderer. We ensured the character exposition was clear by showing the victim is innocent by her lack of dominance and her light-coloured appearance, which juxtaposed with the dark appearance of the environment the antagonist is shown to be a part of.
We also used camera techniques to convey the character exposition. In films of research such as The Amityville Horror by Douglas in 2005, we found that the murderers are conveyed to be on edge, and so the camera shots mainly consist of handycam, which produce shaky and unsteady shots, kind of conveying them to be unstable. However, in our film opening, the murder is shown to be calm and collective, and so the camera shots are more smooth and steady. We achieved this by using the track and dolly.
We came up against a number of challenges when making both our preliminary task and the production of our film opening. Firstly, we had to ensure that the weather and conditions of the general environment we were filming in were constant. In our preliminary task, there was a lack of continuity due to a change in weather and lighting. As we filmed some parts at different times, we overcame this in our production by filming all scenes in one session. Each scene we filmed was in a session of its own. As we had a planned storyboard around the events happening at night, we had to carry out various recce's to ensure that the film quality was sharp and not grainy.
First of all, we considered our lighting source. We shot next to a lamppost which acted as a form of artificial lighting, and also created some darkness, which the murderer hid away in, thus adding to the persona and of the fear of the unknown. To ensure quality of our video when shooting at night, we used a Canon 550D with a variety of lenses to ensure sharp and crisp footage.
Another obstacle that we came up against during our filming stages was that initially our clips were too long. To combat this, we used a fast cutting rate during the second half of our final production during the fast-paced montage, which gave it an eerie feel and kind of discordant, which also adds to the theme of a hybrid of horror and thriller, which was our chosen genre.
The fast cutting rate of the second scene is juxtaposed with the first half of the production, which consists of the murderer appearing to be calm and collected. The faster rate signifies the antagonist to be on edge and depicts his erratic behaviour, which anchors the idea that he is simply human, as the lack of emotion so far may suggest otherwise.
The lack of music or a soundtrack in our preliminary task left a lot of aspects unexplained, such as the build-up of suspense leading to the confrontation between the two characters, where music could have been used in the build-up to the confrontation. After looking back at this, we decided to pay extra effort into choosing music and sounds that were right and appropriate for our film opening. We chose music that built up suspense until the point of the murder, and then used an eerie soundtrack in the aftermath of the death, when the murderer was planning the rest of his attacks. This was very effective in that it gave a very frightful persona to the second scene of the opening, which tied in with the noir-like theme that we resulted with.
In our preliminary task we had a bit of trouble because we wanted to include some scenes of fighting or chasing in our preliminary task, but obviously we weren't allowed to, so that was kind of a problem for us. But in our final production we needed to use a gun, but we weren't allowed to actually use a gun in it, so we had to use a stapler so that it's and not show it very much, so it's kind of open to interpretation as to what the weapon is.
When it came to achieving the shots that we wanted to create, in our preliminary task, when we're looking back at our preliminary task, we thought that there was a lack of creativity in the shots, and maybe this was due to what we could achieve because of our lack of equipment, and that we didn't have a track and dolly or a Steadicam. But when it came to our production of our film opening, we decided to plan ahead and actually get a track and dolly and a Steadicam, and at times when we didn't have a track and dolly we improvised by using 2 skateboards. But I felt this was very effective, as it allows to include a much wider variety of shots than we had in our preliminary task.
One other thing that we did which was helpful in our actual production of Damnation, was when we were shooting at night in the alleyway. There wasn't much light at all, and our only source of light was the street light. And we wanted to keep this, so we did this by using a 50mm lens with an aperture that goes down to f1.4, which allowed a lot of light to get into the sensor of the camera, and therefore in post-production it gave us sort of the scope to be able to make the footage darker if we wanted to, whereas if we used a lens with a higher aperture, maybe not enough light would have been able to get through. I mean, you can't really sort of lighten footage in post-production, so that gave us a lot of sort of scope in post-production.
Generally, we were very happy with the fact that we got to make our preliminary task, because after making it and then looking back at it, we decided that there was a lot that we had learned, so that we felt as a result of this, the standard of our production of the Damnation opening would be increased significantly.
I also think that it really helped doing 2 separate shoots, one here in the school for our preliminary task and the second at Wilderness Woods, because this gave us a chance to practice a wide variety of shots and pick the ones that worked best for us and use them in our final production, such as the pan up from the legs, which we used in both of our tasks and also in our final production. So that was very useful to do those 2 tasks.
Yeah, I was generally quite happy with the progress that we made from our preliminary task, because there were quite a few major errors that we made in that we worked on very well and combated completely in our final production.